Everyone thought Lena chose money over love. But when Ray Hollies found her in the dark, starved, shackled, and begging to die, he lit a match, and the town never saw daylight again. Ray Hollies rode through the dusty trails of the West, the sun dipping below the horizon, leaving a trail of orange and purple streaks across the sky. He was a rugged gunslinger, defined by his weathered skin, calloused hands, and a heart that bore scars. Each crest of the hill reminded him of the smooth laughter of Lena, the woman he once adored. Her smile had shone brighter than any gold he could offer. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Years ago, Lena had chosen a life filled with comfort and wealth over the wild adventures Ray offered. She had captivated him with her spirit and dreams. They shared passionate moments under starry skies and whispered promises beneath swaying trees. But when a wealthy banker came to town, offering her a life Ray could never provide, she turned away. The vivid memories of that heartbreaking day haunted him like a shadow that refused to leave. As Ray continued down the path, dust kicked up around his horse's hooves. He thought about how his world had shifted since Lena's choice. No longer did he roam freely as a fearless gunslinger. Instead, his heart felt like lead in his chest. Each town he stopped in reminded him of her absence, her laughter replaced by silence. Eventually, Ray found himself on a worn trail leading to a small backwater town that looked more like a ghost from the past than a thriving community. The place was draped in gloom, with eyes watching him from behind tattered curtains and doorways. It was then he heard whispers about the banker who ruled this town with an iron fist and private guards that silenced anyone who dared oppose him. Curiosity pulled at Ray as he approached the center of town, but what he discovered there turned his world upside down. The whispers spoke not just of fear but also of betrayal, the kind that made his blood run hot. It all clicked when he caught sight of what lay hidden in the shadows. Lena. Shackled and starved, she was not merely lost, she had been sold into this nightmare. At that moment, something inside Ray sparked to life again, a fire fueled by rage and love intertwined. He realized it was time to reclaim what had been taken from him and tear down everything that bound Lena to this place. The law, peace, mercy. They no longer mattered. All that mattered now was burning this town to the ground, one floorboard at a time. Lena's life since leaving Ray had been a turbulent journey, one that twisted and turned down paths she never imagined. When she chose the wealthy banker over the wild gunslinger, she thought she was stepping into a dream filled with luxury and security. At first, the grand parties and elegant dresses dazzled her, filling her with a sense of belonging in a world far removed from the rugged chaos of Ray's life. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, that glimmering facade began to fade. The banker, charming at first, revealed his true colors behind closed doors. He was not just a man of riches, he was a master manipulator who thrived on control. Lena found herself trapped in a gilded cage, surrounded by lavish comforts but stripped of her freedom. The mansion where she lived became a prison of expectations, with every smile and nod forced under the watchful eyes of the banker and his ever-present guards. As time passed, Lena's spirit weakened. She missed the wild adventures with Ray, the laughter shared under starlit skies, and the thrill of living on the edge. Those memories were like distant echoes that haunted her during lonely nights. The dreams they once shared felt like fading whispers in her mind, replaced by the cold reality of her situation. Eventually, Lena learned that comfort came at a steep price. The banker's dark desires soon revealed themselves when he began to sell her as a mere possession to satisfy his whims. The promises of wealth she thought would set her free instead led to shackles, both physical and emotional. Each day brought new challenges, from navigating social events where she felt like an outsider to enduring the constant scrutiny of those around her. Desperation grew within her, but hope flickered like a dying flame. Lena remembered Ray's fierce loyalty and love. It fueled her determination to survive. She longed for escape, but knew that any attempt would be met with brutal consequences. As she faced each day shackled by fear and despair, she clung to the belief that someone would come for her. Little did she know that fate was about to intervene in unexpected ways, setting the stage for Ray's fiery return and their chance at reclaiming what was lost. Ray Hollies pressed on through the rough terrain, his horse's hooves pounding the earth in a steady rhythm that echoed the turmoil inside him. Each mile brought with it a rush of memories, snapshots of laughter and love that felt both warm and painful. The sky above was a canvas of bruised colors, reflecting his heart's disarray as he thought about Lena. He recalled the way her hair danced in the wind, her carefree spirit igniting a fire in his soul. Those days felt so far away now, buried under layers of regret and loss. Ray remembered their adventures, the secret hideaways they discovered and whispered dreams shared beneath endless starry nights. But the warmth of those memories felt like a flickering candle, battling against the darkness of what had become of her. Deep down, he couldn't shake off the feeling that her choice to leave him had branded him with a scar that would never heal. As he ventured deeper into the wilderness, danger lurked like a predator ready to pounce. The landscape around him grew harsher, mirroring the turbulence within his heart. Rocky outcrops and twisted trees formed a maze that challenged both his resolve and skill. Yet he pressed on, driven by an unrelenting need to find Lena and bring her back home. With every bend in the trail, Ray's thoughts spiraled back to what could have been, the life they could have built together if she hadn't chosen wealth over love. He wrestled with feelings of anger and sorrow, each competing for dominance as he envisioned her laughter replaced by silent tears behind closed doors. He wanted to believe she was safe, but his instincts warned him otherwise. Ray approached the edge of a small town, its silhouette barely visible against the darkening sky. A sense of foreboding gripped him as he neared the place where whispers spoke of a ruthless banker and shadows that concealed more than just fear. Unbeknownst to him, every step brought him closer not just to Lena, but also to a reckoning with his own heart. The memories would either fuel his determination or drown him in despair. Only time would tell which path he would ultimately choose as he prepared to confront whatever awaited him in this ominous town. As Ray Hollies rode closer to the town, the air thickened with an unsettling tension that sent prickles down his spine. The buildings loomed like dark giants, their wooden frames weathered and weary, as if they held secrets too heavy to bear. It was a place choked by fear and silence, where the sun struggled to break through the clouds, casting a pallor over everything. Upon entering the heart of the town, Ray's gaze fell upon the imposing figure of the banker. He stood at the center of it all, a man dressed in fine clothes that draped over him like a shroud. His eyes were cold and calculating, glinting with a power that left no room for dissent. With every word he spoke, it was clear he considered himself untouchable, a king ruling over a kingdom of shadows and despair. Surrounding him were his private guards, fierce and menacing figures clad in black. They moved in a synchronized manner like wolves ready to pounce at a moment's notice. The townsfolk kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact as they went about their business with hurried steps, fear etched into their faces. It was evident that any hint of rebellion would be met with swift retribution. Ray felt a surge of anger swell within him as he observed the oppressive atmosphere around him. He could almost hear the whispers of those who had suffered under the banker's tyranny, stories of families torn apart and dreams shattered. Each person bore invisible scars from lessons learned too late. They all seemed to have accepted their fate in this grim reality. As he moved deeper into town, Ray's heart raced at the thought of Lena trapped within these suffocating walls. He could feel her presence calling to him, urging him to act and not let fear dictate his choices. The banker's power only fueled his resolve. The thought of rescue ignited a fire in his soul that could not be extinguished. Determined to make sense of this oppressive environment, Ray sought out information about Lena's whereabouts, ready to confront anyone who dared stand in his way. He could feel that every step forward was inching him closer to both danger and destiny, the moment when he would finally rise up against this corruption that had stolen everything from him and Lena. Ray moved deeper into the town, his senses heightened as he searched for any sign of Lena. Whispers floated through the air, hushed conversations filled with fear and resignation. As he pressed on, he spotted a narrow alley tucked between two dilapidated buildings, its entrance shadowed and foreboding. His instincts screamed that this dark passage might hold the key to finding her. As he slipped into the alley, the sound of his heartbeat thundered in his ears. The atmosphere shifted, an unsettling stillness surrounded him, broken only by the distant clanking of chains. He followed the echoes until they led him to a door that looked as though it hadn't been opened in years. With a determined shove, Ray pushed the door ajar, its rusty hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the dim light revealed a small room filled with despair. His breath caught in his throat as he spotted her, Lena, shackled and starved, huddled in the corner. She was ghostly pale, her once vibrant spirit now dulled by suffering. Her hair hung limp around her face and bruises mottled her skin, telling stories of cruelty inflicted upon her. Lena, Ray breathed, rushing toward her without hesitation. The sight of her reduced him to a whirlwind of emotions. Relief mingled with fury had ignited a fire within him. In that moment, all his unresolved feelings surged forth like a flood. He had thought he could forget her, that time would heal the wound she left behind, but seeing her now shattered those illusions. Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she looked up at him, shock and disbelief battling for dominance on her face. "Ray, is it really you?" she whispered, her voice weak but filled with longing. Ray knelt beside her, his heart aching at the sight of her chains. "I'm here to take you home," he vowed fiercely, determination cementing itself in his chest. The anger that coursed through him against the banker intensified, no longer was fear an option. He felt her presence reigniting every memory they'd shared and every dream unrealized. With deft hands, he began working to free her from her shackles. As the heavy metal clinked against the stone floor, Ray's resolve solidified. This town would answer for the sins it had committed against Lena. He was willing to burn it down, even if it meant risking everything. Once Ray freed Lena from her chains, a new fire ignited within him, a blaze fueled by love and vengeance. He could feel the weight of the oppressive regime pressing down on him like a heavy cloak. Gone were the days of being a law-abiding citizen. Ray was transformed now, driven by a primal instinct to protect the one person who had always meant everything to him. As they huddled together in that dim room, Ray formulated a plan. He couldn't simply storm the banker's mansion and hope for the best. He needed to be strategic. The guards patrolling the streets were merciless and well-trained, ready to crush anyone who dared challenge their master. Each one was a wolf, loyal only to the cruel banker who held dominion over their lives. Lena's weak voice broke through his thoughts. "Ray, we need to escape quickly. They'll come looking for us." But he shook his head, knowing that fleeing wasn't enough. He needed to dismantle this entire operation to ensure no one else would suffer as she had. He began scouring the room for anything that could help them, tools, weapons, anything he could use against their captors. As he rummaged through crates and dusty corners, he recalled how he used to outsmart rivals in his gunslinging days. The same cunning would serve him now. He felt the gnarled roots of his old self unfurling as he slipped back into the mindset of a cunning predator. "Listen closely," Ray said, turning back to Lena. "We're going to create chaos tonight. While they're distracted by what I do outside, you'll make your way through the shadows and meet me at the edge of town." Her eyes widened with fear, but also with courage as she nodded slowly. "What are you planning?" "I'll start a fire," he declared with cold resolve. "They'll be too busy trying to save their precious possessions while I draw their attention away from you." Fear and determination danced in Lena's eyes as she realized what Ray was willing to sacrifice for her freedom. This man was no longer just the gunslinger she once knew. He was now a force of retribution ready to burn down everything that had shackled them both. With their plans set in motion, Ray stepped back into the oppressive night air outside, ready to embrace his role as a vengeful force against tyranny, a man willing to risk everything for love and justice. The night was still and heavy as Ray stepped out into the darkness, his heart pounding with adrenaline and purpose. He had set his plan into motion, a risky gamble that could either lead to victory or his demise. The dimly lit streets were quiet, save for the occasional scuffle of a guard patrolling nearby. Ray's instincts sharpened as he positioned himself behind a barrel, from where he could observe the movements of the men who had held Lena captive. His first target emerged, a guard standing close enough to the edge of the alley, unaware of the storm approaching him. Ray felt a surge of confidence as he unsheathed his revolver, its weight familiar and reassuring in his grasp. This was where he thrived, where he could once again become the gunslinger he had almost forgotten in the shadows of grief. With a calculated breath, Ray stepped out from his hiding spot, his presence erupting into the stillness like thunder. "Hey!" he yelled, drawing the guard's attention. The momentary surprise on the man's face quickly turned to hostility as he reached for his weapon. Ray acted swiftly. He fired a shot that rang through the quiet night, striking true and sending the guard crumpling to the ground before he could even raise his gun. The echo of the shot faded, replaced by a tense silence. Pulse racing, Ray relished that first taste of rebellion. It felt like reclaiming a piece of himself that had been lost. But he knew this wouldn't go unnoticed. Alarms would soon ring out and chaos would engulf the town, but that was precisely what he wanted. He moved quickly, darting into another alley as shouts erupted in the distance. Ray was no longer just a desperate lover. He was now a ghost haunting the oppressive regime, prepared to unleash havoc. As guards rushed toward the sound of the gunfire, Ray observed their frantic movements and began to anticipate their next steps. He could almost hear their thoughts, who had dared challenge their authority. Little did they know that vengeance had awakened an unstoppable force in him. In that moment, Ray embraced his identity as a ruthless avenger, a protector sprung from love and fury. With each step deeper into enemy territory, he solidified his resolve. This was only the beginning of dismantling everything that the banker had built, the first act of rebellion in a much larger war. As Ray moved deeper into the shadows of the town, memories of Lena surged through his mind like a powerful tide, each flashback igniting his resolve. He could almost feel her warmth beside him, her laughter ringing like music in the air, a stark contrast to the oppressive silence that surrounded him now. He remembered one particular afternoon beneath a sprawling oak tree where they had carved their initials into the rough bark. They had shared dreams of adventure, with Lena's eyes sparkling with hope as she spoke of far-off places and lives filled with freedom. "One day," she had said, her voice full of conviction, "we'll travel the world together, Ray. Just you and me." That memory fueled him. How could she have believed in tomorrow when today had stolen so much from them? He recalled the way she would tease him, her playful spirit challenging him to be more than just a gunslinger. Her belief in him had always pushed him forward, but he felt that belief was shattered by her choice to leave. In another moment, he saw them dancing under the stars after a successful cattle drive. The world had felt limitless then, each twirl bringing them closer as they laughed beneath the shimmering sky. The night had been alive with possibility, their future unwritten and bright. Ray's heart ached at the thought of how quickly that future had crumbled into shadows. With each step he took towards vengeance, those memories served as both balm and blade. They reminded him of what he fought for and the love that remained despite years apart. The pain of their separation intensified his focus. He could not let any more time slip away from them. As he faced down guards and chaos erupted around him, he resolved that every shot he fired would echo for their lost moments together. This was more than just a fight against tyranny. It was about reclaiming Lena and restoring what had been stolen from both of them. Finally, Ray remembered Lena's smile, the way it lit up her whole face and wrapped around his heart like a warm embrace. He would do everything in his power to bring that light back into her life. With every act of rebellion, he carried her spirit alongside him, transforming grief into determination and love into an unstoppable force as he prepared for the battle that lay ahead. As the chaos erupted around him, Ray Hollis moved with calculated precision, blending into the shadows while executing his plan against the banker's forces. The sounds of distant shouting and clanging metal filled the night air as guards rushed to respond to his initial attack. They were formidable foes, trained and loyal to a man they feared, but Ray had an advantage. He knew these streets better than any of them. He used the town's layout to his benefit, engaging in strategic confrontations that showcased not only his sharpshooting skills, but also his cunning. Setting traps along alleyways, he anticipated the guards' movements and lured them into ambushes where he could strike swiftly. Each encounter was a dance of deception and danger. For every shot fired, he felt closer to redeeming Lena's stolen freedom. Ray's heart raced as he faced off against two guards in a narrow passage. He waited for just the right moment before drawing both pistols and firing simultaneously. The guards fell without a sound, their bodies slumping to the ground in eerie silence. It was moments like these that reminded him of how far he had come, from a man bound by law to one driven by love and vengeance. With each skirmish, Ray uncovered more about the corrupt nature of the town's leadership. He overheard snippets of conversations among the guards that revealed their fear of the banker, a man whose greed knew no bounds and whose control over the townsfolk was enforced through brutality. They spoke of families torn apart and hope extinguished under his iron grip. This only fueled Ray's resolve further. He was not just fighting for Lena, but for every soul oppressed by this tyrant. As he continued weaving through darkened alleys, Ray noticed townspeople watching from windows and door frames, their faces pale with fear yet filled with a glimmer of hope as they witnessed his defiance against their oppressors. He realized that his rebellion was inspiring them, a spark igniting within hearts long dulled by despair. With each act of resistance, Ray began to see himself as more than just an avenger. He was becoming a symbol, a beacon of rebellion against tyranny. As he prepared for what would come next, he steeled himself for a final confrontation with the banker, knowing that this battle would be pivotal in changing not just Lena's fate, but also the fate of everyone trapped under this regime's cruel rule. With the town's chaos swirling around him, Ray Hollis pushed forward with fierce determination, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he prepared for the final confrontation. The familiar streets were transformed into a battleground, filled with the sounds of gunfire and shouts echoing off the walls. Every step he took was a mix of anticipation and trepidation, his heart pounding not just from the fight but from the emotional weight of rescuing Lena once and for all. Faces flashed in his mind, Lena's laughter, her bright smile, memories tainted by the years they spent apart. Each recollection fueled his resolve even more. He had fought for her before. Now he was ready to fight through an entire town if it meant bringing her back into his life. As he approached the banker's mansion, a fortified structure rising menacingly in front of him, Ray's instincts kicked in. Guards swarmed like angry hornets, barking orders into the night. He ducked behind a barrel, catching his breath as he scanned for an opening. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. Time felt like it stretched endlessly as fear warred with fierce hope. Then, with a surge of courage and longing, Ray burst forth from his hiding place. He fired shot after shot with precision, each one teaching him how to embrace this darker version of himself that had emerged. They were not just bullets, they were reminders of every moment stolen from him and Lena. The guards fell around him, but it wasn't without peril. One particularly determined brute knocked Ray to the ground and pinned him beneath heavy boots. The weight pressed hard against his chest as memories flooded back. Every challenge they had faced together and all that they could be again if only he could win this battle. In a desperate maneuver born from pure instinct, Ray summoned every ounce of strength and rolled sideways, freeing himself just enough to deliver a swift kick that sent his attacker sprawling. He jumped back up onto his feet like a coiled spring, shaking off the dust and pushing onward toward the door that marked Lena's prison. As he reached it, breathing heavily but resolutely, Ray felt both terror and exhilaration tightening in his chest. This was it, the moment where everything converged, vengeance for all the suffering she endured and hope for their future together. With one final glance at the chaos behind him and steeling himself for what lay ahead, Ray pushed through the door and stepped inside, ready to confront whatever awaited him in this final battle for Lena's freedom. Ray pushed through the door of the banker's opulent office, heart pounding as he stepped into the lion's den. The room was lavishly decorated, a stark contrast to the suffering he had witnessed outside. There, behind a grand wooden desk, sat the banker, a man whose greed and cruelty had cast a shadow over the lives of many. His eyes gleamed with arrogance as he looked up from his papers. "Ray Hollis," the banker sneered, leaning back in his chair. "I should have expected you. Come to play hero, have you?" Ray felt a surge of rage at the sight of this man, who represented everything that had been stolen from him and Lena. "I'm here for Lena," he declared, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Ah, your little girl," the banker taunted with a twisted smile. "You think you can just waltz in here and take her away after all that's happened? You don't understand how things work in my realm." With each word, Ray wrestled with the moral dilemmas that clouded his mind. Vengeance versus justice, love versus hatred. He knew that killing the banker would bring a certain satisfaction but might also mean losing sight of who he really was. Yet more than anything else, he wanted to protect Lena and free her from this tyrant. Before Ray could respond, the banker reached for a concealed weapon beneath his desk. Instinct kicked in. Ray drew his own gun faster than lightning, letting loose a shot that echoed like thunder through the room. The bullet struck true, grazing the banker's arm and sending him reeling backward. Chaos erupted as guards burst into the office at the sound of gunfire. Ray's heart raced. This was it, the moment he had prepared for. With every guard that charged toward him, he fought not just for revenge but for his identity as well. A fierce battle ensued, each clash revealing Ray's skill as a gunslinger honed by years of hardship and loss. Each fall of a guard reminded him of why he fought, that vengeance alone wouldn't bring peace. He needed to dismantle this system of oppression. Amidst the chaos, Ray caught glimpses of Lena's face in his mind, her kindness shining bright like a beacon amidst dark memories. It was that love that steered him through every obstacle. It anchored his resolve against temptation for blind revenge. Finally standing toe-to-toe with the banker amid fallen guards and scattered papers, Ray felt an overwhelming wave wash over him. A mixture of anger for what had been done to Lena and determination to restore their love. This was not just about reclaiming her. It was about finding himself again in a world turned upside down by greed and corruption. "Let her go," Ray demanded as their eyes locked in defiance, knowing now what this fight meant. Justice for all those who suffered under tyranny, and a chance for him to reclaim not only Lena but also his very soul. As the dust settled and the echoes of gunfire faded, Ray Hollis stood amidst the remnants of chaos. The banker's office now a battleground littered with evidence of his fierce fight for justice. He looked around at the fallen guards and broken furniture, feeling the weight of his actions settle heavily on his shoulders. In that moment he was filled with a mix of triumph and uncertainty, wondering if the cost of victory would outweigh the price paid. Lena emerged from the shadows, her gaze locked onto Ray with wide eyes, a mix of relief and lingering fear washing over her face. He approached her cautiously, each step filled with hope and trepidation. "You're safe now," he spoke softly, trying to reassure both her and himself. But as the reality of their situation sank in, he couldn't help but wonder if saving Lena would truly lead to healing or if it would only unearth deeper scars. "Ray, she began to say, but her voice faltered as she glanced around at the mess they had wrought. The truth hung between them like an unspoken question. What lay ahead after such destruction? Could their love withstand the ashes of this town? He reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly as memories flooded back. The laughter shared under starry skies, dreams painted in vivid colors now dulled by hardship. They had fought valiantly against tyranny together, but he questioned whether they could stitch their lives back together after all that had happened. Would their past haunt them like a ghost in the night? In that moment of vulnerability, Ray realized that while vengeance had driven him to this point, it was love that would guide his next steps. The town might be burning around them, but perhaps this was not just an end but also a beginning, a chance to forge a new path free from oppression. "Let's get out of here," he urged gently, pulling Lena closer as they exited the remnants of the banker's lair. Together, they stepped into a world marked by destruction, but also one ripe with possibility. As they moved through the streets filled with townsfolk witnessing their defiance for the first time, Ray felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. He knew there would be challenges ahead, healing wounds both seen and unseen, but he was ready to face them together. With Lena by his side once again, he vowed not only to rebuild their future, but also to stand against any darkness that threatened it. In that moment of resolve, Ray understood that reclaiming Lena was not merely about saving her life. It was about finding his own identity beyond revenge, a commitment to love fiercely and protectively as they ventured into whatever awaited them beyond the flames of destruction.